have a professional camera woman, my wife Carmen, who's going to be shooting these videos, and I want to talk about exposure because I think it's extremely important. Right now, I listen to these patterns. I read them. I have my book handy all the time. If I can get in 5 minutes of listening, or I'm sitting here at my desk and I'm waiting for some software to work its way through or whatever, I have this handy, I can look at it. But when I read or listen, what matters to me is the exposure to meaningful content. I don't worry about whether I remember the meaning of words. I don't worry about whether it's totally clear to me. I know that if I'm exposing myself to content that's more or less meaningful, eventually the brain is going to get used to it. And so I just continue along, and I expose myself on the one hand to sort of simple stuff like this, over and over again, hearing the phrases, reading the phrases, and at the other end of the spectrum is the material that I bring in from Chosun Ilbo, and because the content has to be interesting and meaningful. The simple phrases in that, the patterns are not so meaningful, but the other stuff that I listen to, I'm doing a lot of Chosun Ilbo, and I'll show it to you later on, because what I was using before, the Voice of Russia, Radio Free Chosun, which we have in our library, it's difficult for me to understand when I listen to it. I can read it and understand it, but I've read it and listened to it so often now that it's boring to me. So I've moved away from that. I'm reading Chosun Ilbo, but I will get back to that other content. The main thing is exposure. Exposure without worrying about it, and I don't worry about whether I can produce it. If I'm listening to some structure here in the grammar-based pattern book, all I worry about is is it coming at me? Am I getting exposed to it? I don't worry about whether I can actually use it or speak it, because I know in time that I will be able to. So I sit here, we're in my work area, and if there's a slow moment, like if I'm on the phone, I was on the phone just now with Camtasia, trying to figure out how to combine views of our website with video, and they explained it to me, and I was able to use this while waiting for them to come on the phone, so I could be looking at my book. If I have a minute or two, I can be reading some sample phrases, and so I'm preparing myself for all this kind of exposure. Like I have this book here on Korean history, and it's all written in characters, and I'm sort of licking my chops, but I don't want to start into it until I know the Korean pronunciation for all these characters, and it's all more exposure. And exposure, it's part of the sort of 3 keys to language learning that I've mentioned so many times. First of all, the willingness to spend the time, which is exposure. The attitude, in other words, the interest, you like it. And the third thing is this noticing. And it's not just an ability to notice, it's the desire to notice, the will, the determination. I want to notice what's going on in the language. And these are things that you develop, and the more that you notice, the more new things you can notice. All based on lots of meaningful exposure. And that's the lesson for today. Thank you.